and welcome to the Port of Los Angeles July Media Briefing. I'm Philip Sanfield, the Port's Communications Director. With me, as always, is Executive Director Gene Seroka. Good morning, Gene.
Hello, Philip, and welcome to all the journalists joining us. Coming to you right out of the gate from Los Angeles on Monday morning, and straight from the headlines, we've got a lot to cover today. We'll begin with our latest data and a mid-year snapshot for 2025. And then next, we'll address the latest developments on tariffs and their impact on the supply chain. Joining us for this discussion will be our guest, Bobby Djavaheri, the president of Yedi Houseware, based right here in LA. Bobby will share how these tariffs are affecting his family-owned business and the strategies he's employing to navigate these changes. I'm looking forward to his firsthand insights on how small and mid-sized companies are adapting to this fast-changing trade landscape. And then, of course, we'll leave plenty of time for your questions.
Thanks, Gene. Let's start by looking at our new June data and where we stand halfway through the year.
Philip, after a very slow start, the Port of Los Angeles bounced back strong in the second half of June, finishing with 892,000 container units. This marks our best June on record and an 8% improvement over last year. While record-setting volume is welcome news, it also highlights the tariff whipsaw effect that we've mentioned before. When tariffs kicked in, imports slowed significantly in May and continued to drop through the first half of June. Then, with a pause on some tariffs, cargo began moving once again, getting our dock workers and truckers back out on the job. Overall, the combined cargo volume for the last 2 months is about the same as last year, and it also matches our 5-year average. Looking closer at June, imports were strong at 470,000 TEUs, which is 10% higher than last year and a 32% increase compared to a slower May. 5 unscheduled vessels, known as extra loaders, also helped boost inbound cargo in the latter part of June. For July, we already have 7 extra loaders on the books, and in my view, we're seeing a peak season push right now to bring in goods ahead of potentially higher tariffs later this summer. On the outbound side of our business, the port handled 126,000 TEUs, and after 6 straight months of declines, we saw a modest 3% uptick on the export side. However, there's a concern among American outbound shippers that we'll start to see more reciprocal tariffs on U.S. goods, which could further impact our export volume to the downside. Meanwhile, the port processed 296,000 empties, which is 7% more than last year. We're well within the normal range of empty containers on the ground here at our terminals in LA, which means there's plenty of room to operate as vessels continue to arrive. So where do we stand after 6 months into 2025? The Port of Los Angeles has moved 5 million TEUs, which is about 5% ahead of last year at this time. It is worth noting that the port operates on a year cycle for the fiscal year that just ended on June 30th. And I'm proud to say that we recently completed that fiscal year where we handled 10.5 million TEUs, a 14% year-over-year increase from July 1 of 2024 through June 30 of 2025. And that marks our 3rd fiscal year exceeding 10 million TEUs, making us the only port in the Western Hemisphere to achieve this milestone. And this fiscal year, we reached that mark without a single vessel backed up. The bottom line, the Port of Los Angeles is holding strong and steady on the operations side. With all the ongoing changes in trade policy, we're well positioned to navigate the uncertainties that lie ahead.
Thanks, Gene. Before we bring in our guests, let's touch on that trade policy and your thoughts on recent news.
Well, Philip, we continue to be in for a bumpy ride ahead. Trade partners were looking for long-term mutual agreements. Instead, they received tariff directives through letters from Washington. Tariff hikes in the last week alone represented 25% on Japan, South Korea, and Malaysia origin cargo coming to the U.S. Over the weekend, we learned Canada would be slapped with 35% tariffs, along with 30% for the European Union and Mexico. All this while our biggest trading partner, China, continues to have an average tariff rate of 55% on goods coming into the U.S., and that's only up until August 11th. We'll see what happens after that date. I just returned over the weekend from a visit to Japan where I met with 9 of our top 20 trading partners. The main topic across the board, trade policy and its implications. For Japan-based customers, many are looking at what's best for their company and their customers. Closer to home here for retailers and manufacturers, the uncertainty reigns. Trying to understand what to do, when, and where to buy from are all simulation tasks that continue the undercurrent of flows back and forth based on the information coming out of our nation's capital. And retailers are unlikely to order high volume speculatively and risk deep discounts after the holiday season later this year. And for us consumers, lower inventory levels, fewer selections, and higher prices are likely as we head into the holidays. All that said, our look forward in July is strong. We're estimating right now about 950,000 TEUs, which would be one of our top months. But here again, we're only as good as the information we have at this time. With pushing back the trade tariffs with nations around the world to August 1, we're going to probably get one last push on imports coming to the United States and doing as much as they can to sneak in under that new August 1 deadline. And while it's good news for our waterfront workers, truck drivers, warehouses, and our marine terminals, they're answering the bell with every ebb and flow of cargo that's coming across the docks. Shifting timelines simply mean shifting volume and more uncertainty here at the Port of LA. Looking into August, if everything holds the way we see it right now, I expect volume to ease because of those new tariffs being in place, making it more costly for American importers. Even the National Retail Federation has forecasted a double-digit percentage drop in cargo volume from August all the way through November at U.S. ports across the nation. One thing is certain, the year-end holiday cargo orders should already be in Asia, and what's going to be on its way is what we're going to get for that all-important holiday season. It's too late to try to negotiate orders at this point in time for that year-end product.
Gene, thank you for that overview and for setting the stage for our special guest. Would you please introduce him?
My pleasure, Philip. As we mentioned earlier, Bobby Djavaheri leads Yedi Houseware, a family-owned business known for delivering high-quality kitchen and home products to customers nationwide. Bobby and his company are experiencing the impacts of tariffs firsthand when it comes to manufacturing, logistics, and pricing. Bobby, thanks for joining us this morning. It's so great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Gene. Thanks for giving us the platform to speak and educate everyone about the conflict that we're experiencing.
Bobby, to set the stage, let's jump right in. Tell us about Yedi Houseware, your long, proud history, the customers that you serve, and how your supply chain works.
Sure. The business was founded by my father, Yedi Djavaheri. He's an Iranian immigrant who immigrated via Germany after spending about 35 years after World War II in Frankfurt, Germany. He came here in '84, built the business, and what we do is we import any houseware-oriented products from dinnerware all the way to air fryers, waffle makers, grillers, et cetera, from China directly to the United States. Our channels of distribution are, we have a consumer direct business, a B2C business, and we also have a B2B business where we distribute our brand and products to off-price stores, from TJ Maxx to Marshalls, Home Goods, et cetera, et cetera.
So, Bobby, a lot in the news over the past year plus on tariffs, trade policy, more than 70 announcements since January alone on what all this means. Tell us from your perspective, in your own words, what all of this means to a company like Yeti and how you're going through day-to-day life today.
If you allow me, Gene, I'll try to explain it as elementary as possible for folks who are not in our world every day to understand better. So we went from a small to medium-sized business around COVID time, and unfortunately, that went down very fast with the ocean freight crisis. The ocean freight crisis, where containers were nowhere to be found, were being delayed. Some of my containers fell off a ship. Ships catching on fire, absolute mayhem, freight costing 10, 15, 20 times what it's supposed to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when we came out of that debacle, which, by the way, many of our competitors went out of business, thankfully, because we've been around for such a long time, we had the backbone to succeed. Things were going well. The last few years, under the previous leadership, everything was going just fine. Then, by the way, as I mentioned before we came on, I became an ocean freight expert, right? Now, when I used to not know anything about it. Now, with President Trump's second term, we anticipated tariffs. We anticipated maybe 10, 20% maximum. We didn't think anything after that would be even possible. Surely, in about January or so, because we thought the tariffs were coming, we decided to front load some inventory, right? Front load means we started where our warehouse should be empty in January after Christmas. It looked like November in our warehouse, right? Because we were stocking up in anticipation for tariffs. We like to carry loads. We like to carry inventory 3 months at a time. We like to cycle out inventory every 3 months. So I brought in probably 5 months worth of inventory. Brought it in, and the president, surely enough, as we expected, announced his tariffs. And as you mentioned before, 70 announcements. I've lost count of the announcements. I've lost count of the dates. All I can tell you is what happened was an embargo, right? When there was 150+% tariffs on China, the embargo, it was an essential embargo. I think I've heard you speak so eloquently many, many times about how it looked like a ghost town where you're at, right? A few months ago. And unfortunately, we had a few containers that got hit with that. So with that said, it's been extremely difficult. I've now become a customs broker expert. Right before we were coming on, I was looking up at some loads that are coming in and what they're going to cost, because they have some stainless steel in them. And as you mentioned, one of the 70 announcements was an increase on stainless steel. And some of the products don't fall into that new tariff. So the confusion is the icing on the cake. But with that said, we are here to focus on innovation, on job creation, on sales, on growth. However, we're not only we're going to have a very bad year, we're going to have losses for sure, because I can tell you hundreds of thousands of dollars are going to the federal government from my pocket, not from the Chinese, as the president has suggested so many times. And it's, as you can see, you could hear the frustration in my tone. So that's what's going on over here. I could tell you much more, though.
And we want you to keep telling us those experiences, Bobby. I think it's really important. We've got right now more than 40 journalists on this call, which is a pretty good number for us. We've been doing these press briefings for 6 years now. And one thing that I wanted to get across today was that, Bobby, you're the face of many that import goods through this port complex. As you know, we've got 125,000 customers that call Los Angeles home to import their goods every year. And no one, even the biggest retailer, has more than a 5% share. So looking at it from that perspective, there are so many small to medium-sized family-owned businesses, segment-specific companies that don't hit the trade papers every day, are not on television enough to tell that story. But from your perspective, how do you navigate this, knowing that month to month, you've got to make payroll for the people who have been with you for decades. That you've got a brand that is now in its second and soon to be, I'm sure, third generation. How do you put all this together? The here and now, what you just described, is enough to make anybody kind of keep both hands on the wheel. But what do you do looking out for not only the balance of this year, but your 5-year plan, as an example, running this business?
So let me first tell you so many things there. More about my brand, just to legitimize the brand to your audience if they've never heard of us. We were one of the first. We were the second to the electric pressure cooker space after Instant Pot. We were one of the top 5 to enter in the air fryer market. We were Oprah's favorite things 10 years in a row. Business Insider Air Fryer of the Year 3 years in a row, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been around. I've been to China over 50 times. I know more about that adversarial relationship between the United States and China than a lot of folks on the Capitol. Okay, I know that. I can say that confidently. I know what I know. In addition, I'm a conservative. I hold conservative values and principles. I did not vote for the president, but I have many, many friends who did. And we speak about this short pain thing, right? MAGA folks like to speak about this short pain thing. Short pain, for the long run, is going to be better off. Now, let's define short. How long is short? Is it 1 month? No, it's definitely not. Is it 6 months? No, we know it's not that. Is it going to be a year? Is it going to be 2 years? Okay, so let's define short. Let's define pain. What is pain? What kind of pain? How long? What kind of pain, right? Is it a pain that we're going to be able to come out of? Is it a pain that we're going to feel the effects of for a year or two? So when folks say short pain, they don't understand that when you have a small to medium-sized business that's going to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and many times could be a profit margin of a single year, that could impact years, a few years, right? Because I just mentioned to you, it took us some years to get out of the freight crisis, right? So if I'm one business that is feeling this so-called short pain, and I'm telling you that it might take me a couple of years to get out of it, how do you think that ripple effect is going to affect others? That's point number 1. Point number 2, I'm looking at you right now. Let's take my picture right now. You got picture frames, you got my headphones, you got a printer back there. I'm sitting on a desk. Everything is made in China, MAGA folks. Everything is made in China. Whether you like it or not, everything is made there. Now, what do you expect? Bring jobs back here, right? Give me a break. You think Generation Z is going to come working on a production line to make air fryers from 7 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night? No. So with that said, what do I see 5 years from now? I see this adversarial relationship growing. I do not see it getting better. I think the fentanyl tariff might go away eventually. But we are collateral damage here, right? Small and medium-sized businesses are collateral damage, and essentially because there's things that are much bigger than us going on. There's, I don't know much about it, but there's these mineral things, these mineral deals that China has a monopoly over. There's, TikTok, much bigger things, Apple, et cetera, et cetera. But who's feeling the pain? This pain. It's us. And who's the fundamental backbone of the country? Us. So I know folks that are importing bikes. I know one of the largest privately held toy companies in the country. He is feeling pain. So that's what's going on. And I'm a straight shooter as well. I say the ways. I told you I'm a conservative. To the MAGA folks, it's okay to have the courage and say, hey, I'm proudly MAGA, but I disagree with this policy, right? So that's what I want to hear more of. Folks need to understand that this is not a political, this should not be a party line issue. This is an American issue. This issue is not going to discriminate any American. It impacts all of us, right? So I just don't like it when MAGA folks want to say, hey, whatever the president says, he's right on this. No, it's much more complicating. It's much more complex than that. So, and that's how I speak to my friends every day, and that's what's going on. Yeah.
It really is super complex, Bobby, as you've outlined there. And, our industry has been stated to go under the radar for so long, except for these spotlight issues of COVID and now this trade policy, which have really been headline and front story news all the time for the past year or so. One real simple question for the audience out there. Have you had to raise prices because of all of this?
Of course. Everyone has. And all my retailers and consumers expect it. So, yeah, of course. Go ask Ross. They got price increases for me. No pushback.
So what do we do from here as a supply chain community? Business specific, industrial vertical, broadly how this thread weaves through all of us in the supply chain. Where do we go from here, from where you're sitting?
Two things. One, we do things like this, and for the media, as I mentioned, the import business is part of my blood. I've been setting up shop at trade shows for my dad since I was a kid. I know, and this is who I am. So Gene is like the Michael Jordan of my business, right? He's the import king. And I got to tell you guys, all 40 or 50 of you guys, Gene articulates this so well. He's not unbiased in his approach. He is very friendly in his approach. You could understand. He's a great communicator. You could really understand what is going on. So he's the best person to speak to when it comes to this. I watch Gene before we even met on CNN for the last 6 months, and I get a high out of it because I'm like, wow, this guy really knows what he's saying. So, one, doing this stuff, speaking out, educating. The media needs to educate the people. That's one. Two, we got to lobby. I'm part of the National Retail Federation. We got to educate politicians. If I told you, I've got a text from a senator who has zero idea what I got to find the text. He goes. This is a quote from a senator of the United States. The president doesn't make mistakes. It's insane. That's crazy and that was from the National Retail Federation, who was speaking to a senator last week. So lobby. We got to lobby. We got to push back to the folks that we put in power to tell them how this is impacting us, because it's not going to end well. It's not going to end well. And one more thing for the media. China is so far ahead of us in every which way. Folks in the middle of the country have zero idea. There's no catch up to these guys. And one more thing. I'm as pro-American as it gets. This whole thing about China is going to invade Taiwan and China is this big enemy. No, it's not. It's not like that. They're not like that. And we need to stop the adversarial tone when we speak about our largest trading partner. And that's a whole nother subject. And then I'm going to start digress. But so, yeah, educating folks and lobbying with our politicians.
Well put, Bobby. I'll be back in Washington again the latter part of this week, meeting not only with the Transportation Secretary, but others in trying to just make sure they have the ground truth and enough information to help make good public policy. So we're going to keep up our end on that bargain. And your company, Bobby, serves as a great case study on the impact of trade policy. This is real straight talk, and we appreciate your candidness on these challenges. Let's turn it back over to Philip now and take some questions from the media.
Thank you both. We'll start with questions that came in ahead of time, but if you'd like to ask a question, go to the chat box and submit it there with your name and affiliation. Bobby, is there anything the government could do to assist small businesses or medium-sized businesses under the current circumstances?
I forgot about that. So when this all happened, I was like, wait a minute, we elected you. You are here to support us. We are here to trust you, but you're implementing a policy where it's affecting our livelihood and our lives, our how we make money. I felt like I was stabbed in the back, in a sense, by my own government, because they didn't even offer any type of relief or any type of mechanism in place to say, hey, small business, medium-sized business, importer, we're gonna do this, trust us, and we're gonna assist you with this type of relief to get through this. 1, 2, how about all importers in the United States from anywhere outside of America, you have 2 years to find a source inside the United States. After 2 years, we're going to tariff you. No, instead, brash and fast and unpredictable, right? Businesses do not do well with unpredictability. Businesses try their very hardest to predict the future, to forecast their numbers, to forecast landed cost of goods, to forecast profit margins, to forecast how much to be selling things. And under this circumstances, it's literally impossible to forecast anything. How does that affect the economy? If I'm one business, and I assure you, Gene could attest to this with everyone he's probably spoken to, none of us can forecast anything. How does that affect the economy and the overall GDP? So yes, to answer your question, we would have liked some relief or a mechanism put in place to assist us out of this, or to ease the burden, ease the pain. But no, none of that is around.
Bobby, a follow-up question from Tom Black of Bloomberg. Are you diversifying your products out of China now?
So there is no country outside of China that could make, I'm giving you an example, hundreds of thousands of air fryers in a year in the same quality and same standards as we expect. Some of our factories in China are looking to outsource to sister factories in Malaysia and Thailand and Indonesia, but I've yet to receive a final sample to even test. But I don't have hopes for that in the near future.
Got it. Questions are kind of coming in for you here, Bobby, from the Washington Post. Have you, so you talked about the non-China sourcing options. Have you had to do any kind of layoffs or impact on your employees because of this?
As Gene mentioned, we're a multi-generational family business. So you can imagine folks have been here for 20, 30 years. They're my family. They're my friends. I speak to them on the weekends. We don't do well with boundaries here. So I call them whenever I want. I rather close shop before I fire anyone. So we had to let one guy go in COVID, and that was not the reason. Growth issues were not the reason.
Lisa Bartline from Reuters
but we're not hiring.
Got it. Good point to make there. Lisa Bartline from Reuters is asking, were you able to delay tariff the impact due to what you stockpiled? So were you able to delay raising prices? And could you give us an example percentage-wise about how much and when that started?
The loads that we brought in, of course, we did not pay tariffs on those loads, but those loads, that's just one or two SKUs, one or two of our top SKUs, which I'm going to have to reorder anyways. We have 100 other SKUs that were impacted by tariffs, and trust me, the amount of tariffs paid is way more than 10 years of what this company has ever paid. So what was the question though?
But it was two parts here. Was like, can you offer like a percentage of what kind of tariff, what kind of price raise you had, and do you expect bigger increases ahead due to tariffs?
Okay. I think we raised about 10% and absorbed the rest. It's simply impossible to pass on all of it because folks aren't gonna buy the product. Especially in our business, we're a smaller margin business. Small electrics and dinnerware is a very small margin business. So we have to absorb some, and we pass along around 10%.
And her follow-up was, do you expect more increases in the rest of the year?
No, absolutely not. This president has been, I said that we're unpredictable, but sometimes he's been predictable. Why? I believe in May, here's an interesting story for you guys. In May is when again, it's the 70 announcements. I've lost the dates, but I think in May is when he announced the lowering of the so-called, I called the embargo, right? The 150+% came down. I believe it was May. Why do you guys think he did it in May? Well, I had TJ Maxx's, we're one of the top 2 dinnerware replenishers to TJ Maxx in the United States. And I had their department head here, and he told me in May, I think a week before the president made his announcement, he said, in quote, "Christmas is in jeopardy." So if you think the department head of the dinnerware business of TJ Maxx is telling me, a small size business, that that Christmas is in jeopardy, do you think Walmart, Target CEOs aren't knocking down on the Oval Office front door saying, "Hey, Mr. President, enough of this, lower this embargo because we got to put our fourth quarter production orders in"? So that was kind of predictable. We knew that he was going to bring it down in May because we had to put our fourth quarter Christmas orders in production, right? Back to the forecasting of landed costs, right? And then he did say a 90-day extension until August 1st, which I still don't even know what's gone on with China. But to answer your question, I guarantee you no increases, because that would just be like a bomb to the economy if Christmas had increased tariffs on China. So no, I think they will be lowered, and I think they'll stay the same.
Great.
But I do believe the fentanyl tariffs will eventually go away. But Gene might know more than me.
This question is for Gene from Vanessa Yurkovich at CNN. How will the extra charge on Chinese vessels by the administration impact the port?
Well, thanks for joining, Vanessa. These fees on China-built vessels are set to begin on October 14th. And for a port like ours, it could mean an additional $100 to maybe $300 a container. And every indication I have from the shipping lines is that those additional costs will be passed on to the importer of record. Now, there's also service disruption and change that might take place as well. Those that have China-built vessels in their portfolio may shift those out and bring other national builds into vessel strings in the Trans-Pacific service alone. So there's going to be a little bit of repositioning and juxtapositioning of those assets to try to minimize the exposure to this fee, but those that are applied likely will be passed on, and it's a higher cost. Now, there's been a lot discussed with this going back to March. There were more than 500 comment letters, 2 days of public hearings with the U.S. Trade Representative. And from the original draft to what was implemented, it has been watered down quite a bit. And I would say that the USTR listened to the voice of the business community. But still, it's another layer, another cost, and some more shifting around of these vessels and waterborne deployment architecture that's going to have to be grappled with inside the industry. Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you, Gene. This question is for you as well from Antje Zeep of German National Public Radio. Will the announced 30% tariffs on European imports affect the Port of LA or businesses on the West Coast, and in what way?
Thanks for joining today, Antje. In short, yes, these 30% tariff on Europe imports will impact us. And although Europe is a smaller percentage of the business that we do here at the Port of Los Angeles, you start taking the EU tariffs at 30%, Mexico business, Canada, 55% tariffs on China. You start adding all these up, the cumulative effect is exactly what Bobby's been talking about. It's uncertainness, it's choppiness, it's folks trying to make different decisions than those that they had in their strategic plan, and it's just this whipsaw effect. As we saw in the month of May, people slammed on the brakes importing goods from China and to an extent other places. And then with this little bit of timeline movement to August 1, you start seeing a quick shot up of the imports that are coming in now. And it's just a yo-yo effect of stepping on the accelerator, slamming on the brakes, that has people under this level of anxiety, not really understanding where we go next. This is not a transactional business. This is very, very much a capital-intensive business on the supply side. And for those who are buying and selling, these contracts go for a longer duration than just days and weeks at a time. So we're not set up like this. A planning horizon is necessary, knowing what cost structures are, knowing what is needed from a human capital standpoint are all really important. So again, yes, there will be impacts, and it's just layered on to all that we've witnessed thus far this year. Thanks for joining today, Antje.
Thank you, Gene. We've got several more questions here, so we'll try to run through these quickly. Bobby, this is from Greg Miller of Lloyd's List. To get an idea of your company size, can you give us an estimate of about how many TEUs you might import during the year? Let's start with that one real quick, and then I'll go to his second question.
Anywhere between 50 to 100.
Okay. And if tariffs remain the same, what's your strategy the rest of the year? Do you continue to import and pass those costs along, or do you reduce imports?
So there's something we've been practicing SKU nominalization in the sense that we have carefully and are carefully picking and choosing what SKUs to bring in that we could turn at a better pace. For example, the small electric business is a very, very cutthroat business, very, very, very small margins, higher ticket prices. So those are going to be probably halved in imports, or maybe even more than half. So that business is going to suffer. The dinnerware business probably be down 20%, 30%. We're talking about imports here. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. This next question is for Gene from Bill Mongaluzzo, Journal of Commerce. After an increase in July, the NRF, as you stated, Gene, forecasts this double-digit decrease in imports across U.S. ports through November. What is your projection for imports in the coming months?
Thanks for the question, Bill. As we covered, it looks like July is going to have an uptick as well, because that timeline on the tariff negotiating front has been extended to August 1, and remember, August 11 for China. So we're going to see folks trying to get in under that timeline. But these shifting timelines mean that it's really difficult, to Bobby's point, to predict both supply and demand. Our own Damian Young has said we've got 7 extra loaders already on the schedule for the month of July. They weren't even seen but 10 days ago as we did the evaluation for the upcoming month. And I'll give you this too. Remember, this front-loading conversation and operation really began last summertime, when on the campaign trail, tariffs and trade policy were discussed. Some savvy importers and those that had the capability started building up inventory dating back to last summer. We're going to start comparing ourselves to some unusually high numbers for the month of July, August, September, and on down to the end of the year. So no matter where we go from here on an aggregate level of how much cargo is coming in, it's going to be compared against some pretty elevated container statistics from last year. So overall, I'm with Matt Shea and the NRF that if nothing changes, these deadlines are held, and these elevated tariffs remain in place, at least to an extent that we know they are right now, you probably see a drop-off of cargo beginning in August because there's enough inventory here right now, by and large, to be able to get us through the next months. The other piece to this is that you may not have the levels of inventory and the selections on store shelves. The OEMs in Detroit, where I visited a couple 3 weeks back, told me that their tiered suppliers are bringing in just a base level of parts and components. They're not building up stock or inventory. Auto sales look a little bit different right now, too. Both Jim Farley of Ford and Mary Barra of GM have commented wide and far about the impacts of tariffs on the cost of an automobile from their companies. So this looks a little bit different than it has in years past. Thanks for the question.
To add what Gene just said, he just said some products won't be on the shelves. I just said right before that my small electrics, half of the SKUs won't be available this year. So that's just one example to add to what you said.
Thank you. Thank you both. Stas Margaronis, American Journal of Transportation. Gene, the world's first commercial-scale e-methanol plant began operations recently in Denmark with Maersk. Does the Port of LA have e-methanol production plans to support green shipping?
Thanks for joining as always, Stas. The answer is yes. As we move into this next area of cleaner energy, renewables, etc., we need to be able to service those ships right here in LA. You remember the Aletta Maersk that came in last summertime, the first zero-emission ship using e-methanol. That's 16,000 TEU workhorse vessel. I have shared with state, county, and city leadership that we need to get in the game for fueling these ships. And it's going to take a new look at how we do entitlements and permitting, how we get into the infrastructure business on energy. We've got the great Los Angeles Department of Water and Power working with us on the Zepio project for electricity and our 2030 timeline of zero emissions yard equipment. We've got to do the same thing with ships. They're still the largest emitter of pollution. We've cut out 90+% of the particulate matter coming from ships over the years under the Clean Air Action Plan. Now to get to next level work, we're going to have fueling stations of renewables and synthetics right here in LA, and I want to lead the charge. Thanks, Stas.
Very good. We're going to try to squeeze 3 more questions into the next 5 minutes here. So following up with Stas is asking for Eugene, Harbor Truckers GSC went out of business at the Port of Oakland last week. Are Harbor Truckers collateral damage from the tariffs in 2025?
Thanks, Stas. And I've got a lot of friends at GSC, and it was a shame to read about that. But I think this is kind of center to the conversation Bobby and I are having today, that there are a lot of folks that are impacted across a variety of segments in this supply chain. And everything from consumers tightening belts and watching the family budget to companies who are no longer hiring, in some cases laying off. And now you're starting to see a few that are getting out of the business as a whole. This is quite disturbing, and it does go with these ebb and flow of information and how companies really can't plan. You know, this trucking business works on very, very thin margins and trying to get as many runs as they can every day. If you go 6 weeks like we did with depressed volumes, companies like GSC are going to get hurt. Thanks, Stas.
This question, Bobby, quickly from Lorianne Larocco at CNBC. Tariffs are layered. Can you give us an estimate of the costs that you are paying percentage-wise on tariffs, and are you using bonded warehouses?
So I'm just giving an average.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, one load should cost $1,500 to $2,000, It could cost $40,000-$50,000 under this issue right now with, for example, the stainless steel tariffs that I was speaking to Gene about before we came on live.
Okay, and
What was
about,
part two?
are you using bonded
No,
warehouses?
no. So during the embargo, we looked into it. I think that's how we connected. Maybe I don't remember. Yeah, okay. I was looking into it, and then I was actually looking to make this a bonded warehouse too, which apparently it's easy to do. But my dad and I just decided just to take in these few loads and forget it. No bonded warehouses. I think we're past. I think we're past that. That's my opinion. Yeah, but I do think the European folks and South American folks should probably look into that right now.
Got it. We're going to have time for one more question. I think this is our last one. It's for both of you. Bobby, we'll start with you for a minute, and then we'll do Gene for a minute. How do you approach lobbying or talking with legislators when the attitude of some lawmakers is, as you said, Bobby, the president doesn't make mistakes? We'll start with you.
I've been lobbying. I've gone to DC and talked to folks for the last 15 years. I am myself, and I think by now you could see my personality and attitude. I don't shy back. Keep it respectful, somewhat convincing. I could only do the best I could do. At the end of the day, my experience is these guys have another agenda. Most of them, 99% of them, unfortunately. But I can only do my very best. So when I speak to them, it's like most of the time I don't see any impact, but who knows? But again, I could only do my very, very best.
Thank you. Gene?
Doing nothing is not the answer, and has been pretty much our MO for the 11 years I've been on the job here, is that we're always going to push out the ground truth. Relationships are sacred to me through times that are good and bad, and making sure that we as a supply chain community are all pulling together. And it's my duty on behalf of the people that I work with every day to make sure that we keep sharing the impacts, positive and negative, of public policy, decision making, and in this particular case where it becomes so acute in the fluctuation of information and the rising costs that we see here. Again, we'd love to see more manufacturing in the United States, but likely it would be an automated facility with very few jobs. We'd love to see more exports so we can help that balance of trade. And if so, let's see a sector-specific plan with timelines and talent requirements, training needs to get folks up to speed into that marketplace. We'd love to be a part of that, and that'll be some of the messaging I take back to Washington again this week. So there are a lot of ways we can slice this and try to make sure that we have an understanding of public policy so we here at the port and our partners can begin that planning process. And that's where we need to land this in pretty short order.
I'd like to add one more thing. I agree with everything Gene just said, but also I listen. What were we paying before? Our duties before 2.7%, 4.5%, sometimes 20%. I think there should be a universal, maybe 10% flat tariff on anything you bring in here. I think that's a fair compromise for folks that want American-made stuff and are against bringing in things from outside of the United States. Also, Gene mentioned that everything would be automated here. Yeah, because almost everything is being automated in China. And one more thing, if the day ever comes that we'll do more manufacturing here in the United States, we'll partner up with our Chinese counterparts. I don't know anything about factories and producing plates and bowls and air fryers and waffle makers. They do. So I would partner up with them. But that's I don't know if that'll ever happen. I just wanted to add to what you're saying, Gene.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thank you both, and that concludes the media questions. Gene, back to you for some final thoughts.
Thanks, Philip. Bobby, thank you again for joining us today and sharing your experience. I thought this was so informative, just to help folks know what a business like yours is doing every day, what your experiences have been, and what your outlook for the future is. And we're a lot alike in the respect that we're going to keep swinging. You know, we're going to keep promoting our industry, our businesses, and the people that we work with to make sure that we keep chipping away. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
In closing, I'd like to share some exciting news about the Port of Los Angeles and the 2028 Olympic Games, the 34th Olympiad, and the third time we'll be hosting here in Los Angeles. As you know, the 28 Games will be held 3 years from today with the opening ceremony to kick us off, and planning is already well underway here in the host city of Los Angeles. I'm proud to announce that the LA 28 Olympic and Paralympic Games has selected the Port of Los Angeles as one of 2 venues to host Olympic sailing events. Belmont Shore and the city of Long Beach will be the other great location. The port's picturesque outer harbor area will serve as the Olympic home for 6 boating events. This West Coast region is renowned for its exceptional racing conditions, making it a premier high-performance sailing venue. Athletes will compete in a thrilling atmosphere as thousands of spectators experience these Olympic water events up close in a stadium-like setting. This marks a homecoming for Olympic sailing. Nearly a century ago, back in 1932, Olympic sailing took place at our same outer harbor location. Bringing the 2028 sailing events back to the port continues the legacy and history of the Olympic Games here at the Port of Los Angeles. I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to LA 28 Chief Executive Officer Reynold Hoover, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, and Los Angeles City Council member Tim McCosker for their all-out efforts to bring Olympic sailing here to the Port of LA. This is a tremendous honor, and we're committed to showcasing the LA waterfront to millions of Olympic viewers around the world. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to further invest in our communities and workforce with the world's spotlight on us. I'm excited to see these sailing events right here in our own backyard against the backdrop of America's port. It's fitting for the Port of Los Angeles, our nation's gateway to global trade, to unite the world through sport and culture. Thank you for joining us again today. We look forward to seeing you back here again in August.